I would definitely say that for a good Scrum Master, knowing Scrum is not enough. And most Scrum Masters don't even know Scrum well. I've been looking back at the experience that I had over the last year or so, everything that I've learned, everything that I've read online, everything that other people complain about when it comes to Scrum and Agile. And I've noticed a few trends that I tend to agree with that people complain about. So I guess this segment will be I have a little bit of a bone to pick with Scrum. Scrum has become, to some extent, the used car salesman or the double glazement salesman of the agile world. And let me explain kind of what I mean. It was designed to facilitate small development teams in projects, ideally where the end goal is not clearly defined at the beginning, that you have to do ongoing discovery and you need to get constant feedback from end users. So that means you have access to end users. It's rigid in certain ways, in a way to allow for a little bit of predictability. The problem was, or is, that it became too popular for its own good. Now, when you're in that situation, there are three scenarios. Two of them positive, one of them kind of the wrong way to do it. And I think Scrum went the wrong way in this particular scenario. So the two positives, first of all, is you can either look at where you are now. It's fair enough. You started off creating a framework for a very specific set of developers in very specific conditions, but it became so popular that every company, everybody and their grandma wants to adopt it and wants to incorporate it into their own company. So you look at your new expanded client base, what their requirements are, and then you adjust Scrum in order to fit that requirement of huge project in some cases with 100 plus developers working on it, or in places where situations where you've made promises to your investors that you'll deliver by a certain date in order to beat your competitor to market. So you have strict deadlines. So there are different conditions where Scrum kind of doesn't work, and you could adapt it to make it a bit more palatable or a bit more fit those specifications a little bit more. One way of doing it. The other way of doing it, and this is where it takes a little bit more modesty and a little bit more discipline, is effectively just say no. And kind of to give an example here is, imagine, and I'm sure you would have heard of situations like this or you have seen them yourself, but somebody hires or interviews at least or gets a agile consultant, agile coach, a scrum master, kind of saying, I want to implement Scrum in my company because I heard it's the greatest thing since sliced toast, as they say, and I want you to help me implement this into my company. And you have a look at the company, say, look, I'm sorry, Scrum's not for you. No, this, like, your requirements don't meet the specifications of this framework. But nobody does that either. And that's where kind of the analogy of the used car salesman comes in. What they do is they just think of the money. They just think of, I'm about to get hired by this person. I'm about to get a job. So to hell with what they actually need. Sure, we'll jam fist Scrum into whatever you want.
But
Like imagine like in a you know car floor, to build on this analogy. Man comes with his family to buy a car from you, and effectively you see they have a huge family. You understand they don't have a means of transportation anymore, and they need their first car. And he just falls in love with the sports car that you have on display there. You can kind of tell
I
him,
see
look,
where this is going. Yeah,
yeah,
I
this doesn't fit
I
your
disagree.
requirements.
I disagree.
You really.
Like, yeah, I mean, so first of all, there's so many things to unfold there, and I think we should go back and keep discussing that. But
Yeah,
the analogy itself and the whole idea that people do not say no to Scrum, I think it's fake. And the truth is that if you're hiring a consultant, let's say the team doesn't do Scrum better, they will do something else. So they usually hire an agile coach and they work with the teams to make sure that they are doing something. So it's not that you're not getting the job, because you are getting the job, and you may spend there half a year to decide what framework the team may end up using. You still have the job even if Scrum is not good for that company. So I disagree with the fact that you should say no, because you shouldn't say no because you would then shoot yourself in the leg and you wouldn't have a job. Because
correct. But that's where I kind of I've what I've noticed, especially that I've done without almost like subconsciously, that I've used Scrum as a Trojan horse because it's so popular that companies just say I want Scrum, and then they put me in a team, and I go like, look, you're a support team. Scrum doesn't work for you. Here's Kanban. And then I implemented Kanban. But whenever upper management kind of tells me, it's like I want Scrum in that team, and I have to kind of go like, yes, sir, no problem. Here's Kanban.
yeah,
It's
but
not
that's a bit of a different scenario right there. But I do see where you're coming from, and not everyone should adopt Scrum. That's a given.
exactly.
And yes, it's super popular, but I think that was a good thing. Yeah, and ended up being a bad thing because everyone wants it and everyone does it. Well, not everyone. A lot of people do it badly just because they want it and they don't really want to invest in time first of all, and then in training for people, because everyone needs to do the Scrum training, not just the Scrum master. But perhaps one thing that I would say there is it's good that everyone wants to adopt it. I think where we can change the mindset or change how everyone looks at Scrum is the Scrum masters. And I think there's a big gap of knowledge, because I do know Scrum masters who do not know Scrum very well. So that's like, if you were to know Scrum, I mean, you went to and suggested Kanban for a team that should not do Scrum. And if they're doing Kanban now, they're doing better. So you being there means that they were better off than when you weren't.
Yeah.
So you brought value to the team. That
Yes.
that means that means that you have done something good, even if not as a Scrum master, as a coach.
Exactly, but that's not defined within I guess the framework of Scrum. It's not defined. A Scrum master needs to know other I guess frameworks other than Scrum. It's I would definitely say that a good Scrum master, or at least for a good Scrum master, knowing Scrum is not enough, and
So
most Scrum masters don't even know Scrum well.
yes, and that's the thing. Scrum Master in the Scrum Guide is not supposed to be a full-time role. So I don't buy it that Scrum Master should be the role in a company. Like, if you hire someone, hire a coach. I like to say agile coach. It encapsulates everything. So you should know frameworks. If you're hiring someone as a Scrum Master in your company, by default that person should only do Scrum, right? But that basically rejects any notion of you doing something else, which limits you, which makes you bad at your job at the end of the day.
Yes, but that goes back to my, I guess, the first point in kind of the first positive thing that you could do is okay, you started off with Scrum and it doesn't fit everywhere, but you're in a situation where it became so popular that in the Scrum manifestos, the Scrum Master is not supposed to be a full time role, supposed to be a part time role, but here we are. So, can we not adapt the Scrum manifesto and make Scrum fit the requirements that are present today in the situation that we are in, rather
Scrum Guide or
than,
Scrum Manifesto?
sorry, well, yeah, that's kind of the, I guess, everybody that learns, hypothetically at least, I have met exceptions, but everybody that learns starting from the Scrum Manifesto. And
Right.
if you learn that it's a, kind of, it's supposed to be a part-time role with small teams,
Yeah, it doesn't say
etc.
part time in the guide. It doesn't say part time,
doesn't
but that,
seem, but it's almost implied in terms of the way it's kind of. And everybody that I know that is experienced, that has 10 plus years experience in the industry, kind of treats the scrum master role is in a way that it's supposed to be a part-time role, like you're. And I think we even talked about this in previous segments where we said, if you want to become a scrum master, you shouldn't start as a scrum master. You should start with a different role
yeah.
to build upon. That it almost kind of again implies that it's a part-time role. It's something that you add on top of a different role within the team.
Yeah, but I also look at Scrum. So this is, I keep reading about this more and more, and I actually agree with this. And it's actually my opinion as well. So the more you end up doing Scrum, the more you realize that perhaps you can break out from the Scrum framework and be faster. So I have done
Yeah,
this with a lot of teams. I use Scrum to begin with until the team kind of outgrew Scrum. So this is actually something that maybe is worth discussing, because Scrum, I don't think it's supposed to be the end game. I think Scrum is supposed to help the team get into a rhythm, into a pattern, and then afterwards, the whole shuhari, afterwards, you're at the re. You kind of break from that framework, and then you get faster and faster. You keep
yeah,
the
and
main kind of idea that you do retrospect, so you do look back, and you can say, oh, let's improve this, or this is not working, let's always better ourselves. And then you
yeah.
also keep the team close to the end user, because that's something that we want to do in Agile at any point. But you don't need to call it Scrum anymore, if that makes
Well,
sense.
agreed. But what I would say in this case, and I pretty much followed a very similar path in which I kind of, the more experience that I gain and the more different teams that I kind of start engaging with and try and help out, the more I step away from Scrum and kind of incorporate different tools in. But that's not the way it's sold. That's not the package in which it is sold. Like, for better or worse, we do have to admit we are the exception. We're not the rule. We are not. This is not what the average Scrum Master does.
But
So
isn't it better if it's not so? If it's
for
sold as
us,
a,
yes, but for the industry as a whole,
no, like for everything, like, okay, so let's look at it like this. So Scrum is being sold as not a complete, but as a light framework that you can use for however long you need to do software development. And to some extent, it may be true, actually. But also the fact that it's not specified that, oh, you start with Scrum and then you do something else, or you learn to become better, that doesn't really sound as strong. It's like, I'm telling you, like, we can
yeah,
come back to the car salesman, and I can say, yeah, you can start with this car for like 1 year, but then it's going to break down, and then you need
and
something that's
nobody
stronger
wants
and
to buy
faster.
it. Yes,
Nobody will buy it. So
but
then Scrum would not be so popular.
yeah, but then in terms of, in that case, Scrum needs to adapt as think of it as software itself. When you want to build a piece of software to sell to a client, knowing that that piece of software will only serve their needs for a very limited amount of time, and they need to buy something else that you have, isn't it better to just design the original piece of software in a way that kind of better fulfills their requirements? Because
So we do have both sides. We do have the updates. So we do have updates to the Scrum Guide. It's not like every month or something. You have it every few years, but you do have
yeah,
updates. And you do have the live people that are kind of bettering it.
yes,
So it's a
but
live framework
well,
on top of which you can add.
my point, or my, I guess, my bone to pick there is simply the fact that most Scrum Masters don't sell it correctly, don't use it correctly, and the fact that it is through, basically, you can get the PSM1 certification quite easily, technically, being a
Yeah.
certified Scrum Master, and then you end up misusing it. Like, basically, you flood the market with really bad scrum masters that hurts everybody.
I
And
think,
then
yeah, I think we're touching a different problem now. I think the main problem right now that we are touching is everyone can be a scrum master without prior software knowledge, software
on paper,
development knowledge.
yeah,
So you can do a 2-day course and be a scrum master.
yeah,
It's what
theoretically.
it takes. 2 days. That's what it takes to be a scrum master. And yes, you may look at the salary, like the yearly income for a scrum master. It's quite high compared to a lot of other jobs. So you will say, "Oh, okay. So what do I need to do to become a scrum master? Oh, read 13 pages and then
Yeah,
do like this whole 2-day course, and then I'm it. That's it. I'm done."
yeah,
So yes, that's
a
I
problem.
guess that's the main problem. But that problem, I don't think is the Scrum Guide's problem. I think it most likely
I
is a problem that everyone kind of, so an industry where you can build, let's say, a lot of certificates and just hand them out is like
well,
you can
I
give
but
out driver's license after 2 days. Does
that's
that
where I
mean that the cars are bad?
well, no, but that's what I disagree in terms of. I think it is the Scrum Guide's problem because it is not addressing a real issue. That it's like if you do build, I don't know, to put it this way, a car that has built-in software that helps people pass their driving test, knowing full well that they're not ready. Like you've built a car that helps kind of be it makes it easier to be misused, to kind of build on the analogy that you gave. What I think is happening here is people see that it's so easy to become a scrum master by just 2-day course and reading 13 pages, and they do not sell scrum to their employees or to their companies as a light framework on which you build other things. They do sell it as this is the complete package, and all I need to do is follow the ceremonies, do nothing else, and get a paycheck. And that kind of is misused, stagnates the company, brings all kinds of problems, and just damages the reputation of Scrum as a whole, which is partly why we also see kind of a bit of a downward downward trajectory of Scrum's reputation in the last 12 months or so.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a snowball effect. Whichever way we end up looking at it, because I think we find flaws in it, and there are, but whichever way you look at it, like it ended up being this huge, huge thing, and then it kind of broke down because a lot of Scrum Masters, again, as I mentioned, I know Scrum Masters that have not read the Scrum Guide. So how can you be a Scrum Master without knowing what you are master of? And the fact that, again, companies hire Scrum Master as a role, and this is where I'm not going to change things, but this is where I disagree,
Hmm,
because
I see.
if you hire an agile coach, you hire a different type of expert. And if you want to send the agile coach to do agile in a team, he may take on the role of a scrum master, or the hat of a scrum master in a scrum framework for the scrum team. But as soon as he leaves that team, he is still an agile coach for the company, so he can
Yeah.
join another team and be a kanban
Yeah,
master,
I,
kanban
I
coach.
I guess what I'm just saying is a lot of companies don't exactly understand Scrum and just rely on hiring a Scrum Master to basically do everything for them. And that Scrum Master, if they're not a good one, then that ends up damaging the company as a whole. Last kind of analogy, which I think actually just came to me, and I think it works best. If you build a video game and you find that in that video game there's a lot of cheaters, hackers, you don't go like, oh well, people misuse my video game, it's nothing to do with me, not my problem, I'm just going to ignore it, it's their responsibility to not cheat. No, you start building anti-hacking, anti-cheating systems into it in order to make it more resilient. That's kind of the analogy that I'm trying to use for Scrum. It needs to be more resilient against abuse.
I mean, I can turn the analogy around.
Yeah, please do.
So the well, you're comparing a video game, which is something that, so let's say a video game that's being played online, which is a live thing which needs updates, always needs constant updates, compared to a framework. Like, what if, let's say, we would play Heroes 3 right now, and we would find
Right.
a lot of faults because Scrum is 20 years old. Heroes 3 has
Well, it has been
been around
updated every
since.
few years, as you said before.
Yes, but it's patches. It's not like it's a rework based on
Well, yes,
like
but that
day-to-day usage. It's just
to almost
patches, really.
well to some well, I guess in that case my argument would be to build on that. It's time to move away from Heroes 3 and start Heroes 4. Like, okay, let's bring on Scrum 2. Scrum 1 is being abused too much, damaging the reputation of Agile as a whole, and causing quite a bit of damage in the industry when you end up coming across very bad Scrum masters. Is not resilient enough. So then it may be time to go for the 2.0
But
version.
what if it balances itself? Like, what if it's like, let's say, a crypto coin, and then you have everyone buying it, and it goes super high, but then people are opting out because it's not
Possibly, but
it's not as amazing. And then
well,
this whole bubble dissipates because everyone who's not a good scrum master right now can end up struggling to find job. And
that
yes, you do
yes,
have
and
a
I
lot of good scrum masters struggling to find job because of that as an effect, but I think there's gonna be a balance to this. And also
mm,
about 2.0, if you google agile 2.0, you're gonna find a lot of stuff. So there's
yeah. So
conversations about agile 2.0.
2.0, which might be kind of the way that the industry needs to go in. It might be that it balances itself out. It might also be that it sinks the Scrum ship, and people get left with a very bad taste in their mouth, and they just do not want to touch Scrum again. So
Yeah,
that's
but
kind of the risk. What I'm kind of
the reason why I'm not seeing the risk is, okay, you're destroying Scrum. What replaces it?
something completely different. Something it wouldn't have to be a complete rebrand, I guess, or a complete new marketing,
So yeah,
like
it needs to be something
Scrum
that
with a fake
replaces it.
mustache on.
Yeah. So unless everyone is prepared to do something else, I think everyone's kind of falling in their safety zone, comfort zone, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
So unless you have something that clearly replaces Scrum and promises companies and the management who doesn't really care about what the team is doing, just wants some buzzwords, let's say, unless someone promises, oh, it's Scrum 2.0 or it's the best thing ever since Scrum, then most likely it will not be replaced overnight. So that's why I would
Yeah.
bet, rather than bet on the fact that Scrum is going to dissipate, I would bet on the fact that Scrum will kind of be a bit more hated on, which is, I think it is now, be a bit more unpopular because everyone finds faults in it. And then you will have Scrum masters who actually know what they're doing defend what actually Scrum is about. And then you kind of revert back to the original premise, to the original ideas. And then you kind of come full circle, I think,
All
with
right.
this.
So what I think is then we agree that something's got to give, like something, a
Yeah.
change will have to happen. You think that it'll balance itself out. I think that it's in the danger of, if not Agile as a whole, at least Scrum becoming a very small niche. I guess that might be my biggest problem. That Scrum itself might sink, not Agile as a whole, and it might be a shame because it might you might be able to save this ship, the Scrum ship, and not let it sink. But whatever happens, yes, I do agree with you that Agile will survive. The industry needs something, a direction to go in.
Yeah. Let's
All right.
revisit this in like a year and see who was more on the right track.
All right. Perfect.